Hi guys, welcome back to DMAD lectures. Today the topic which I will be discussing about is the nervous supply and musculation of upper limb, right? Nerve supply and musculation of the upper limb. I will be actually dividing this topic into two videos, the first part and the second part. In the first part, I will be discussing only about the nerves, right? The nerves which innervates the upper limb. And in the second part, I will be talking about the muscles, their action, their innervation, their insertion, and everything in detail, with relation with the nerves that innervate the upper limb, right? So just know that there are two parts in this topic. So let's start from the first part. When it comes to the innervation of the upper limb, usually we should first start with the brachial plexus. Yeah. So brachial plexus is actually a bundle of nerves, right, which starts the innervation of the upper limb. So I won't be discussing about the entire brachial plexus. I will be just discussing about the parts of the brachial plexus which innervates the upper limb, right? So if we start from the brachial plexus, we should start from the roots of the brachial plexus, right? Now there is a structure of each and every plexus which starts from the roots, which continues on to the trunks, and then it continues on to the divisions, then to the cords, and finally into the terminal branches. Yeah. So this is the basic structure of each and every plexus, nervous plexus. It could be either cervical plexus, it could be either brachial plexus. Each and every plexus usually has this structure. Yeah. So we'll start from the roots first of the brachial plexus and then move on about how the brachial plexus innervates the upper limb. So usually when it comes to roots, the brachial plexus starts from C5, right? It starts from C5 and goes on to C6, C7, C8, and T1. T1 means the first thoracic root. This is the fifth cervical root, sixth, seventh, eighth, and the first thoracic root. Yeah. So these are the roots which I mentioned earlier that is relevant to the brachial plexus. So I'll just mention it as R. Now the fifth and the sixth root together, right? They form a certain trunk. Seventh root on its own form another trunk. Now eighth and the first thoracic root forms another trunk, right? So these are the trunks. This is the second part of the structure of the brachial plexus. Now this trunk, obviously since it's higher, we call it the upper trunk. Yeah. Here we call it the middle trunk, and obviously this is known as the bottom trunk, the inferior trunk, or we call it as the lower trunk. So these are the roots and these are the trunks of the brachial plexus. Now as we discussed earlier, from trunks appears the divisions, right? Now each and every trunk usually has two divisions, which is known as the anterior division and the posterior division. So if we talk about the anterior divisions of these trunks, the upper and middle trunks, they also, each and every trunk has anterior and posterior divisions. Now what happens is that the anterior divisions of the upper trunk and the middle trunk together, they form one cord, right? These are the anterior trunks, right? Sorry, anterior divisions. Now these two anterior divisions form one cord. Now this cord is known as the lateral cord. So I will write it like this. These are the divisions. These are the cords, right? The lateral cord. This is the first cord. And the lower trunk on its own form one cord, right? Now this cord is known as the medial cord, right? So this is also the anterior division. So there are two chords already, the lateral chord and the medial chord. Now, the posterior divisions of all these trunks together, right? These are the posterior chords. Now the posterior chords all together form one chord. This chord is known as the posterior chord, right? So we talked about three chords now, the lateral chord, the posterior chord, and the medial chord, right? So they arrive from different divisions of each and every trunk, like I explained before. And from these chords, I talked about earlier that the branches or the terminal branches will start. Now, before going on to the divisions of these chords, there are several nerve branches which we should talk about, which arrive directly from the roots of the brachial plexus, and they innervate the upper limb, the sections of upper limb. So there are two such branches which we should know first. The first branch which arrives directly from the roots of the brachial plexus is known as the dorsal scapular nerve, right? Now the dorsal scapular nerve is usually innervated, or it starts from both C5 and C6, right? From C5 and C6, roots C5 and C6. So this nerve is known as, I'll write it like this, dorsal scapular nerve, right? Just remember, it starts directly from the roots of the brachial plexus. And the second nerve as such, we have the long thoracic nerve. Now the long thoracic nerve usually starts from both C5, C6 and also from C7, right? So this is the second nerve which arrives directly from the roots of the brachial plexus, and this nerve is known as the long thoracic nerve, right? So these two nerves are very important because they supply to particular muscle groups of the upper limb. So you should know the main characteristic of these nerves will be they are starting from the roots, right? Roots of the brachial plexus directly. Now, if we come to the trunks, the upper trunk is the only trunk, right? The upper trunk is the only trunk which gives out branches all by itself, right? All the other branches, other trunks like middle trunk and lower trunk, they divide into divisions and they turn into chords, and then they will innervate muscles of the upper limb through branches. But the upper trunk usually gives up two branches which are important in innervating the upper limb, right? So upper trunk is the only trunk which gives out such branches. The first nerve or the branch which comes out directly from the upper trunk is known as, we can call it as, so the first trunk which comes from the, first branch which comes from the upper trunk is known as the suprascapular, right? Suprascapular nerve, or we call it suprascapular branch, right? So the second nerve which comes from the upper trunk directly is known as the subclavian nerve, right? So we have suprascapular nerve and subclavian nerve which comes from the upper trunk of the brachial plexus directly. So from the middle and lower trunks, we usually don't have branches like that, right? So let's move on to the innervation or the division of each and every chord here. So we talked that there are three chords: the lateral chord, the medial chord, and the posterior chord. Yeah. So when we talk about the lateral chord first, usually the lateral chord has three branches mainly, which we should remember, right? If I take the lateral chord like this, the first branch which you should remember is known as the lateral pectoral nerve, right? The lateral pectoral nerve is the first branch which comes from the lateral chord. And then we might have the second branch which is known as musculocutaneous nerve. From the name of this branch, you can understand that this nerve or this branch usually innervates both muscles and the cutaneous fat layer. So the first branch is known as the lateral pectoral nerve, and the second branch is known as the musculocutaneous nerve. And also, it usually gives out a branch which is known as the lateral root for the median nerve, right? The lateral root for the median nerve. So there are three main branches in the lateral cord: the lateral pectoral nerve, the musculocutaneous nerve, and the lateral root for the median nerve. So those are the three main branches of the lateral cord. So if we move on to the medial cord of the brachial plexus, it usually gives out the median cord usually gives out five main branches. I'll just write it as like this: 3-2. This is just an easy way to remember this. So the main two branches usually are, this is known as the medial root for the median nerve, right? So the lateral root for the median nerve usually comes from the lateral cord, whereas the median root for the median nerve, medial root for the median nerve comes from the medial cord. So together these two roots form one of the main, or the one of important nerves, the median nerve, right? So the lateral root and the medial root together form the median nerve. And there are other three branches of the medial cord which we should remember mainly, right? I'll write them like this. So, I'll write it like this, right? So the first branch of the medial cord is known as medial pectoral nerve. Now, as we saw, the lateral cord also gives a branch known as lateral pectoral nerve. Now, the medial cord usually gives a branch known as a medial pectoral nerve. So, both these nerves, just for your information, supplies or innervates the pectoral muscles of the body, right? So, this is the medial pectoral nerve, and the other two branches, which we should know, will be actually cutaneous branches, right? We call it as the medial cutaneous branches for forearm and arm, right? So these two branches usually goes on to innervate the cutaneous, which means the skin of the forearm and arm. So the five branches, oh no, there's one else. So the other main branch of the medial cord is known as the ulnar nerve, right? So these are the five main branches of the medial cord: the medial pectoral nerve, the two branches of cutaneous supply to the forearm and arm, and then we have the ulnar nerve. So both this median nerve and the ulnar nerve, right? These nerves usually have cutaneous branches as well, right? So these cutaneous supply, cutaneous nerve supply, we call it as palmar cutaneous branches, right? Now the palmar cutaneous branches sprout out from both ulnar nerve and the median nerve itself. So those are the basic branches of the lateral and the medial cords. So let's move on to the posterior cord. Now the posterior cord branches are similar, the structure is similar to the medial cord, which I will write as 3-2. I'll bring it up here, I guess. The main two branches, right? The main two branches of the posterior cord is known as the axillary nerve, right? The axillary nerve and the radial nerve, right? So hence the name posterior, we should know that the axillary nerve and the radial nerve are usually innervating the posterior surface of the upper limb, right? So those are the two main branches of the posterior cord, and the other two branches, other three branches, usually I can write it like this, right? So these three branches, the first branch is known as thoracodorsal nerve, or in Latin we call it as nervus thoracoldorsalis, right? The thoracodorsal nerve. Then we have the superior and inferior subscapular nerve. So this is the superior and this is the inferior subscapular nerve. So those are the five main branches of the posterior cord of the brachial plexus, right? We have thoracodorsal nerve, we have the superior subscapular nerve, we have the inferior subscapular nerve, we have the axillary nerve, and we have the radial nerve. So this is roughly the innervation of the upper limb, which starts from the brachial plexus and moves on to its terminal branches and innervates the upper limb. So this is actually the part one of this topic. So in the next video, I will be discussing about the muscles in detail, how they are innervated by these nerve branches, because each and every nerve branch here innervates the entire upper arm or the upper limb, right? So in the second video, I will be discussing about those muscles in detail and their action, their innervation, their insertion, and everything completely, right? So this is the first part of this topic. So I hope you understood. And if you have any questions, kindly leave a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, kindly subscribe and click the bell icon. And thank you very much for your cooperation, and I'll see you with the part 2 of this video. Thanks.